All right, y'all, welcome to the show. It is Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Got a bunch of stuff to dive into today. So first of all, we have the results of the Brazilian election coming in, Lula versus Bolsonaro. I say we have the results. That's a semi-lie. We actually are now going to a runoff election on October 30th. We'll talk about that in just a second. I'll give you the specifics. And I got a whole bunch of stuff on Trump for you, so I think the downfall is in full effect now. I do. I might be going out on a limb by saying that, because I feel like the conventional wisdom among everybody, among traditional media and new media, is like, Teflon Don is still in effect. I seriously disagree, man, and I have some new numbers that build my case for me. Trump goes at McConnell in a vicious fashion. We have a lot on the new Prime Minister of the UK and how she effectively tanked the British economy and the uprisings in Iran. We're going to get into that. So we got a whole bunch of stuff to get into. I'm really looking forward to it. But before I do that, allow me my shameless plugs, everybody. Usually I save these for the end of the show, but I feel like it's probably less effective if I wait till the end of the show. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. It means the world for me. It costs nothing to you guys, and it actually might help us in the algorithm. And as you know, the algorithm is massively biased against independent media. So if you can click that like button and that subscribe button and maybe leave a comment or something like that to give it some algorithm love. I haven't looked at these numbers in a long time, but I don't know, at least like 30 or 40% of the people who watch the videos are not even subscribed. So if just the people who watch and don't subscribed, then we might crack 1 million subscribers off that alone. So hook a brother up on that front. And of course, if you appreciate the show and you like the show, you can always support the show on Patreon. The link is in the video description box for virtually all the videos that we upload. And Crystal Kyle and Friends as well. If you like Crystal Kyle and Friends and you want to get the videos of the shows a day early, you can sign up on Substack. It's $5 a month. For everybody else, you could sign up for free and get the full audio version of the podcast a day later. And probably something I should plug more often. We have the full podcast version of this show that you're watching right now, the Kyle Kulinski Show, available every day we have a show. So you could check it out over on Spotify or whatever your preferred, podcasting outlet is. So go ahead and take a look at that. I know some people are not as big on YouTube. They don't like going video for video on YouTube. You don't have to do that anymore. You could just go listen to the full shows as soon as they come out. But anyway, enough shameless plugs. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So let's talk a little bit about the Brazilian general election. So here are the results that we have right now, the morning after, with 99% reporting. Lula got 48.4% of the vote, about 57.2 million votes, and Bolsonaro got 43.2% of the vote, which is about 51 million votes. And then you have a couple of, outsider candidates here. Simone Tebet got 4.2% of the vote. Ciro Gomez got 3% of the vote. Then you have a bunch of, much lower candidates over here. So the polls going into the election suggested that Lula was likely to win in the first round. In order for him to do that, he needed to get above 50%. He needed to get an outright majority in the first round. He did not do that. So, even though Lula won, and I think it's fair to say won kind of comfortably in the first round, it's still an overperformance from Bolsonaro. The polls were off. Some polls had, Lula with up to a 20-point lead going into election day. That is inaccurate. So what that tells you is there is still a very vibrant, thriving far-right movement globally. And in this instance, represented by Jair Bolsonaro. Now, Bolsonaro is a guy, and we'll get to more on this in a little bit, but, he's the incumbent. He's been governing since, 2018 now? He's a mess. He's been terrible for Brazil. And even given that fact, he got over 50 million votes. So now we head on October 30th is when we have the runoff election. And let me just give you a little bit of background about this election and why, of course, it's so important. So Lula is a former union leader who already was the president of Brazil from 2003 to 2010. While he was president, he was massively successful, and he was beloved by the people. So, not many people know this, but he ran for president 3 times in Brazil and lost. And that's just an interesting little fact to give people on the left who might feel, like the tides never turn in our favor. Give you a little bit of hope, because here's a guy who lost 3 times and then eventually won. And then when he won, he was wildly successful and he was beloved by the people. So, his politics, I do think it's fair to categorize him as sort of like a social democrat. I'd say he's like a social democrat. The statistics from his administration are astonishing. So he decreased child malnutrition by 46%. He did the Zero Hunger Initiative, and that helped cut child malnutrition in half. My favorite Lula fact is he grew the middle class in Brazil from about 50% of the population to 73% of the population. He did a $40 billion housing initiative. He did what's called a family allowance program, which is, I guess you could say, sort of like a UBI type thing. He spent billions of dollars on infrastructure and job creation. He lifted 20 million people out of poverty. And another interesting fact about him is that he's a rare leader who I think you can, accurately say is both ideological. So he has, beliefs and he sticks to them, but he's also incredibly pragmatic. And usually I feel like, that's not a mix that's common. And he walked that line between being, an ideological leftist and being pragmatic in a way that was just phenomenally successful. Just to put that in perspective for you, while he was president, he was able to have like a friendship and a business relationship and become allies with both George W. Bush in the U.S. and Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. So he was like the go-to leader to sort of like iron out differences and negotiate settlements, because he was the perfect mix of ideological and pragmatic. So he was a massively successful leader of Brazil, and what brought him down, interestingly enough, is this fake corruption scandal. And actually, credit to Glenn Greenwald, who did a lot of the reporting on this front, which, helped get Lula out of prison. But it was this whole fake corruption scandal. Eventually, after all the reporting from Glenn Greenwald, and we learned all the facts around it, Lula was released, I believe, by the Supreme Court in Brazil. There was a corrupt judge who put him in prison. So basically, that was an instance of like anti-corruption politics being weaponized to go after somebody who is actually doing good for the country of Brazil. So it was the corrupt people who were accusing Lula of being corrupt. And then so now he's running for president again, and he just won the first round. So, I mean, look, there's a lot we can learn from Lula. This election is not over yet, okay? So we still have to have the runoff election. Most of the polls seem to indicate it is likely that Lula will win on October 30th, but you have to understand, Jair Bolsonaro is already pulling a Trump. Like, John Oliver, who I like in some ways and don't like in other ways, but he did a great piece on Bolsonaro, and, he has the clips in there of Bolsonaro basically already saying, if I lose, I'm going to say it's rigged, and I'm going to, do everything I can to stay in power. And look, this is a guy who, it could not be more of a fundamental opposite than Lula. And this is the battleground. What we see in Brazil is sort of like the battleground of global politics, where you have somebody who's a fake populist on the right, like Jair Bolsonaro, who has a mass movement behind him, but then you have a populist left person who actually delivers, who is up against Bolsonaro. So let me give you some more information on Bolsonaro. Jair Bolsonaro is known for his strong opposition to left-wing policies. Most notably, he has been a vocal opponent of same-sex marriage, environmental regulations, abortion, affirmative action, particularly racial quotas, immigration, particularly from Haiti, Africa, and the Middle East, which he once called the scum of humanity, drug liberalization, land reforms, and secularism at the federal level. Among other things, he has also made statements in defense of the Brazilian military regime, a dictatorship known for constant human rights violations, he argues that torture is a legitimate practice and says that he would try to pass new legislation regarding the introduction of life imprisonment to the Brazilian Penal Code. Bolsonaro supports the privatization of state-owned companies and advocates for free market policies, although critics have stated that his policy-making record does not in fact show him to be a supporter of economic liberalism. I remember when he got elected, there was this great article here in The Intercept, which gave us Jair Bolsonaro in his own words. So here's what we knew back when he was elected, that he had a history of saying stuff like this, quote, "I am in favor of a dictatorship, a regime of exception. Quote, there's no doubt about it, I'd do a coup on the same day if the Congress doesn't work. And I'm sure at least 90% of the population would throw a party, would applaud, because it does not work. Congress today is good for nothing, brother. It just votes for what the president wants. If he is the person who decides, who rules, who trumps the Congress, then let's have a coup, go straight to the dictatorship." This is him praising torture. A torture technique works. I'm in favor of torture. You know that. And the people are in favor of it as well. Got more for you. Through the vote, you will not change anything in this country. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It will only change, unfortunately, when one day we start a civil war here and do the work that the military regime did not. Killing some 30,000, starting with FHC, which is then President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, not kicking them out, killing. If some innocent people are going to die, fine. In any war, innocents die. This is a dude who got over 50 million votes. I really wish Lula knocked him out in the first round. He did not, but Bolsonaro has to go down. And I hope the safeguards are in place to make sure he doesn't do a coup, because he's gonna try, man. He's gonna try. I will not fight nor discriminate, but if I see two men kissing in the street, I'll hit them. I'm a rapist now. I would never rape you because you do not deserve it. Slut. This was him speaking to a congresswoman on November 11th, 2003. I would be incapable of loving a homosexual child. I'm not going to act like a hypocrite here. I'd rather have my son die in an accident than show up with some mustachioed guy. For me, he would have died. If your son starts acting a little gay, hit him with some leather, and he'll change his behavior. Jesus Christ. And then we have a question. If your son fell in love with a black woman, what would you do? Oh, Preda, I'm not going to discuss promiscuity with whoever it is. I do not run this risk, and my children were very well raised and did not live in the type of environment that unfortunately you do. If a homosexual couple lives next to me, it will devalue my home. If they walk around holding hands and kissing, that devalues it. Here's another one. Are you proud of the story of Hitler's life? No. Pride, I don't have, right? Do you like him? No. What you have to understand is the following. War is war. He was a great strategist. Jesus Christ. Interviewer asked him, have you ever hit a woman before? Yes. I was a boy in El Dorado. A girl was getting in my face. The interviewer says, put her against the wall, a few taps, pa. Bolsonaro says, no, I'm married. My wife isn't going to like this response. Got more on gay people. He seems to think about this issue a lot, doesn't he? Homosexuals will not find peace, and I have congressional immunity to say that I'm homophobic, yes, and very proud of it. It is to defend children in schools. Wow, how does that sound familiar? The whole, we're just defending children in schools thing. Sounds exactly like the trans panic that's going on. I would not employ a woman with the same salary of a man. But there are many women who are competent. Well, how progressive of them. Beyond Brazil, above all, since we are a Christian country, God above everyone. It is not this story, this little story of secular state. It is a Christian state, and if a minority is against it, then move. Let's make a Brazil for the majorities. Minorities have to bow to the majorities. The law must exist to defend the majorities. Minorities must fit in or simply disappear. So that was Bolsonaro saying, let's get rid of secularism and be a Christian country. Violence is combated with violence. Another quote from him. No, although that one, I think, is actually kind of reasonable if you think of, World War II, for example. I went with my 3 sons. Oh, the other one went too. There were 4. I have a 5th also. I had 4 men, and on the 5th, I had a moment of weakness, and a woman came out. So what, he's upset that he had a daughter or something? If I become president, there won't be any money for NGOs. These worthless people will have to work. If I get there, as far as I'm concerned, every citizen will have a firearm in their home. You will not have a centimeter demarcated for indigenous reserves or settlements of the descendants of escaped and freed slaves that have protected status. Jesus. Has anyone ever seen a Japanese begging for charity? Because it's a race that has shame. It's not like this race that's down there, or like a minority ruminating here on the side. The big problem in Brazil is that the government is at the jugular of businessmen. The worker will have to decide less rights and employment or all the rights and unemployment. Jesus Christ, man. This guy's just like a buffet of wrongness. I'll give carte blanche for the police to kill. Wow. Okay. Since I was single at the time, I used the money from my congressional housing stipend to get laid. Oh my God. This group, if they want to stay here, will have to put itself under the law of all of us. Leave or go to jail. These red marginals will be banished from our homeland. Jeez. All right. I mean, we don't need to go through any more. You guys get the gist of it. Holy fucking shit. Now, as president, Bolsonaro has really deregulated around the Amazon and let business sort of run amok in there, which is disastrous for the environment. And he's just as bad as his quotes would suggest. So, look, I really hope that this goes smoothly. I'm under no illusions, though. If Lula wins in the second round, which he's likely to do, but it's not guaranteed, I really hope the safeguards are in place. Like, Lula better have some internal support, either in the military or with the police force or with the generals or whatever, because things can get ugly. And you could seriously see civil war, skirmishes, things of that nature. So, but look, the final point on this, and this is the most important point. Lula is a leftist, a populist leftist who has delivered for the people of Brazil. And when you have true populist left against fake populist right, look at what happened to this point. Lula won by over 5 million votes in the first round. He almost got over that 50% line. So, look, this is why I'm hopeful, right? Is that when you give people an option between fake populist right and a real populist left, they go real populist left. And it just so happens to be the case that Lula, since he previously delivered, people knew what he was about. They knew he was fighting for the people of Brazil. They knew he had the policy chops. So, look, it's a positive tale, but it's also a cautionary tale, because now he's got to win on October 30th, and we have to hope Bolsonaro, worst case scenario, he bitches and moans and whines like Trump did, but doesn't actually follow through with an illegal coup. But I sincerely think he's going to try to do that. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.